She knew she shouldn't have answered her phone at 6 a.m., but desperation has its own ringtone. Autumn Rose Bellamy sat on the edge of her Murphy bed, staring at the pile of unpaid bills scattered across her tiny studio apartment floor. The morning light filtering through her single window cast harsh shadows on the overdue notices. Electric, internet, phone. The red stamps seemed to mock her artistic ambitions. Please, Autumn. I know it's last minute, but I'm throwing up every 5 minutes. This pregnancy is kicking my ass. Her sister's voice crackled through the speaker, weak and pleading. The job pays $800 for 5 days. Cash up front. $800. Autumn's green pearl eyes widened as she calculated quickly in her head. That would cover her rent and leave enough for groceries that weren't instant ramen. She tucked a strand of her intense black hair behind her ear, already knowing she'd say yes before her pride could interfere. What exactly am I walking into, Chloe? Babysitting. 1 kid, 6 years old. The dad owns some vineyard in Connecticut. Super quiet, super easy. Just keep the little girl entertained while he works. Think of it as a mini vacation from the city chaos. Autumn glanced around her cramped studio. At the camera equipment she couldn't afford to upgrade. The coffee-stained portfolio. The vintage band t-shirts hanging on makeshift clotheslines. A vineyard in Connecticut sounded like stepping into someone else's life entirely. The father. He's not some creep, right? God, no. Chloe's laugh was tired but genuine. He's actually, well, let's just say if I weren't married and pregnant, I might have volunteered for this job myself. But he's recently widowed, so he's probably more interested in getting work done than anything else. Recently widowed. Something in Autumn's chest tightened. She understood loss, not death, but abandonment. Different scars, same ache. 20 minutes later, she was shoving her clothes into her worn duffel bag, her movements quick and decisive. She grabbed her portable camera, her lucky vintage cardigan, and the poetry book she'd been trying to finish for 3 months. If she was going to play house in wine country, she might as well document it. The train ride to Connecticut gave her time to overthink everything. What if the kid hated her? What if the father was impossible to work with? What if 5 days in suburbia made her realize how much she was failing at city life? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Address is 847 Vineyard Road. Front door will be unlocked. I'll be in the fields until noon. Marin is excited to meet you. E. Crestwood short. Direct. Businesslike. Autumn stared at the message, trying to imagine the man behind it. She'd expected something warmer, maybe a welcome or basic instructions. Instead, she got efficiency. The cab dropped her off in front of a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Old stone, wraparound porch, windows that caught the late morning sun like mirrors. Vineyards stretched beyond the house, neat rows disappearing into rolling hills. Autumn stood at the bottom of the front steps, duffel bag in hand, suddenly feeling like she was about to walk into a life that wasn't hers. She reached for the door handle, took a deep breath, and turned it. The door opened to reveal not an empty house, but a man who definitely wasn't supposed to be there until noon. Time stopped the way it does when you realize you're staring. The man standing in the doorway was nothing like Autumn had imagined. Tall, easily 6'2", with the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. His honey-colored eyes held hers for a beat too long, and she noticed the way his light brown hair caught the morning sun, slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. His linen shirt was wrinkled, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked by honest work. You must be Autumn. His voice was deeper than she'd expected, with the kind of careful control that suggested he chose his words deliberately. And you must be early. The response slipped out before she could stop it, earning her the ghost of a smile. I came back for coffee. Forgot my thermos. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. I'm Elijah. The house smelled like cedar and something sweet. Cinnamon, maybe vanilla. Autumn's photographer's eye immediately cataloged details. Hardwood floors worn smooth by generations. Morning light streaming through tall windows. Fresh flowers in mason jars. It felt lived in but lonely, like a house holding its breath. Daddy! A small voice echoed from somewhere upstairs, followed by the thunder of little feet on wooden steps. Marin appeared at the top of the staircase like a fairy tale illustration come to life. Blonde hair in 2 braids, wearing a purple dress covered in silver stars, and a plastic tiara that caught the light. Her honey-colored eyes, identical to her father's, went wide when she saw Autumn. Are you the babysitter? You're really pretty. I like your hair. It's so black it's almost blue. The words tumbled out in one breathless sentence as she bounded down the stairs. Maren, remember what we talked about? Elijah's voice carried gentle correction, but Autumn caught the way his shoulders relaxed when his daughter appeared. Sorry, I'm Maren Elise Crestwood. I'm 6 3/4, and I live here with my daddy and our cat, Shakespeare. She executed a small curtsy, tiara tilting dangerously. Autumn crouched down to Maren's eye level, charmed despite herself. I'm Autumn Rose Bellamy. I'm 27 and I live in New York with no cat, but I really want one. Why don't you get one? My apartment's too small. It would be like keeping a tiger in a shoebox. Maren giggled. Shakespeare wouldn't fit in a shoebox. He's very fat. Maren. Elijah's tone carried a warning, but Autumn caught him fighting another smile. She's just being honest. I respect that in a person. Autumn stood, noticing how Elijah's gaze followed her movement. There was something in the way he looked at her, not invasive, but aware, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. I should show you around before I head back out. He cleared his throat, the professional mask sliding back into place. A kitchen's through here. Maren knows the rules about snacks. There's a list on the refrigerator. As they walked through the house, Autumn absorbed everything. The kitchen was spacious but lived in, with a breakfast nook that faced the vineyards. Children's drawings covered one section of the refrigerator, held up by magnets shaped like grapes. A half-empty coffee pot sat on the counter next to a single mug. Bathrooms upstairs, along with Maren's room and the office. My room's at the end of the hall, but he paused, running a hand through his hair. You won't need to go in there. Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. There was a careful distance in the way he spoke about his own space, like he was protecting something. The guest room is down here if you need to rest. Maren usually naps around 2, though she'll insist she doesn't need one. I do not need naps, Maren announced from where she'd been trailing behind them. I'm practically 7. Of course you are, Autumn agreed solemnly. What do practically 7-year-olds do for fun around here? We could play Princess Rescue, or build fairy houses, or... Maren's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. We could take pictures. Daddy says you're a photographer. Elijah's eyes met Autumn's over his daughter's head. Only if Miss Autumn wants to. She's here to work, not play games all day. But something in his expression suggested he hoped she'd say yes. Actually, Autumn said, pulling her camera from her bag. Taking pictures sounds perfect. The smile that spread across Maren's face was pure sunshine. And when Autumn glanced up, she caught Elijah watching them both with an expression she couldn't quite read. He grabbed his thermos from the counter. Suddenly, all business again. I'll be back around 6. Emergency numbers are on the fridge. If you need anything, we'll be fine, Autumn assured him, though she wasn't entirely sure she believed it herself. As the front door closed behind him, Maren grabbed Autumn's hand. Come on, I want to show you my secret place. It's where I go when I miss Mommy. Autumn's heart clenched, but she let herself be pulled toward whatever truth was waiting. Some places hold memories like pressed flowers between pages. Maren led Autumn through the back door and across a yard that looked like it belonged in a storybook. Ancient oak trees created natural archways, their branches heavy with late summer leaves. A tire swing hung from the largest tree, moving gently in the breeze like it was waiting for someone to remember how to play. It's back here, Maren whispered, as if they were approaching something sacred. They walked past a vegetable garden, where tomatoes hung heavy on their vines, past a shed with peeling paint and windows that caught the afternoon light. The vineyard stretched beyond them, rows of grapevines creating neat corridors that disappeared into the distance. And there, Maren pointed to what looked like a natural alcove formed by an old stone wall covered in ivy. That's my secret place. As they got closer, Autumn realized it wasn't just a random spot. Someone had made it special. A small wooden bench sat against the wall, weathered but sturdy. Mason jars filled with wildflowers hung from branches overhead, and smooth stones formed a perfect circle on the ground. Did you make this? Autumn asked softly. Mommy and me did. Before she got sick. Maren's voice was matter-of-fact, but her small hand tightened around Autumn's. She said every girl needs a place where she can think her biggest thoughts. Autumn's chest tightened. She crouched down beside the stone circle, running her fingers over the smooth rocks. What kind of thoughts do you think here? Important ones, like wondering if Mommy can see me from heaven, or if Daddy will ever smile the way he used to. Maren settled onto the bench, her tiara catching the dappled sunlight. And sometimes I think about whether it's okay to be happy when someone you love is gone. The honesty in those words hit Autumn like a physical force. This wasn't just a 6-year-old talking. This was a soul that had learned too much about loss too early. I think, Autumn said carefully, settling beside her on the bench, that the people who love us want us to be happy, even when they can't be here to see it. Do you think so? Really? I know so, because love doesn't stop when someone goes away. It just changes shape. Marin considered this, swinging her legs from the bench. Daddy doesn't like to talk about Mommy anymore, not since the sad time got too big for him. Autumn's heart broke a little more. She could picture Elijah carrying his grief like a heavy coat, trying to protect his daughter from his own pain while drowning in it himself. Sometimes grown-ups don't know how to be sad and take care of other people at the same time, Autumn said. It doesn't mean they don't miss her too. I know he misses her. I hear him sometimes, late at night. He doesn't cry loud, but the house sounds different when someone's trying not to cry. The image of Elijah alone in his room, struggling silently with his grief, made Autumn's throat tight. She understood loneliness, had lived with it in her cramped studio, surrounded by city noise but feeling utterly alone. Can I tell you a secret? Autumn asked. Marin nodded solemnly. I came here because I needed the money. I was scared and behind on my bills, and I thought this would just be 5 days of babysitting. But sitting here with you, I think maybe I needed to find this place too. Why? Because sometimes we need to remember that we're not alone, even when we feel like we are. Marin studied her with those honey-colored eyes that were so much like her father's. Will you take a picture of my secret place? So you can remember it when you go back to New York. Autumn lifted her camera, framing the shot carefully. The ivy-covered wall, the hanging mason jars, the stone circle where a mother and daughter had once planned dreams together. But when she looked through the viewfinder, she saw something else. Marin sitting in the dappled light, looking like hope itself. Actually, Autumn said, lowering the camera, would you mind if I took a picture of you here? You belong in this place in a way that makes it more beautiful. Marin's face lit up. Really? No one's ever said I make something more beautiful before. Then they haven't been looking hard enough. As Autumn raised the camera again, she caught movement in her peripheral vision. Elijah stood at the edge of the garden, partially hidden by the shed, watching them. Even from a distance, and she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. How long had he been there? How much had he heard? Their eyes met across the yard, and something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or a recognition. He'd been protecting his daughter from his own pain, but maybe what Marin needed wasn't protection. Maybe she needed someone who could hold space for both the sadness and the joy. Elijah started walking toward them, his steps careful and deliberate. Daddy! Marin jumped up from the bench. Autumn says I make beautiful things more beautiful. But Elijah's eyes stayed on Autumn, and she could see a question there she wasn't sure she was ready to answer. There are moments when silence says everything words can't. Elijah approached slowly, like someone walking toward the edge of a cliff. His honey-colored eyes moved from Marin's bright face to the sacred space his wife had created, then settled on Autumn with an intensity that made her heart skip. I didn't expect you back until 6, Autumn said softly, standing from the bench. The irrigation system started acting up, had to come back for tools. His voice was carefully controlled, but she caught the slight tremor underneath. I heard voices and, Daddy, look! Marin rushed to him, grabbing his dirt-stained hand. Autumn took pictures of Mommy's place. She said I make beautiful things more beautiful. Isn't that nice? Elijah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Marin, why don't you go inside and wash up? We'll have lunch soon. But Daddy, now, sweetheart. There was something in his tone that made Marin's expression shift from excitement to uncertainty. She looked between her father and Autumn, sensing the sudden tension she couldn't understand. Did I do something wrong? Marin's voice was small. Autumn's chest tightened. No, honey, you didn't do anything wrong at all. Go ahead, Marin, Elijah said, his voice gentler. I just need to talk to Miss Autumn about work stuff. Marin nodded reluctantly and skipped toward the house, but not before giving Autumn a quick hug that smelled like sunshine and strawberry shampoo. The silence that followed felt heavy as storm clouds. I'm sorry, Autumn said finally. I didn't know that was... I wouldn't have brought her here if I'd understood. Elijah ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as his tell when emotions threatened to surface. She's never brought anyone here before, not since her mother died. Since my wife died. The correction was sharp, protective. Caroline built that place with Marin. It was theirs. Autumn felt heat rise in her cheeks. I wasn't trying to intrude on something sacred. Marin said it was her secret place and she wanted to share it. I thought, you thought what? That a few hours here gave you the right to make decisions about my daughter's emotional well-being. The words hit her like a slap. That's not what I was doing. Isn't it? Elijah stepped closer, and she could see the pain he'd been carrying etched in the lines around his eyes. You don't know us. You don't know what we've been through. You're here for 5 days, then you're gone. But Marin gets attached easily, and when I leave, she'll have had someone who listened to her talk about her mother without flinching. Autumn's own temper flared. Someone who didn't treat her grief like something dangerous. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? I know what it's like to lose someone and have everyone around you act like mentioning their name will break you into pieces. The words came out harsher than she intended, but she didn't take them back. I know what it's like to be lonely in a house full of people who are too scared of your pain to actually see you. Something in Elijah's expression shifted. Autumn, she misses her mother, and she's worried about you. She knows you're sad, and she knows you're trying to hide it from her, which makes her feel like she has to hide her own sadness. Autumn's voice cracked slightly. She's 6 years old, and she's carrying more emotional weight than most adults I know. I'm protecting her. You're isolating her. And yourself. The words hung between them like a challenge. Elijah's hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, and for a moment, Autumn thought he might walk away. Instead, he sank onto the bench his wife had once shared with their daughter. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. I don't know how to be her father and grieve Caroline at the same time. Every time I see Marin smile, I think about how Caroline is missing it. Every time she cries, I think about how Caroline would know exactly what to do. Autumn's anger dissolved instantly. She sat beside him on the bench, careful to leave space between them but close enough that he could feel her presence. How long has it been? 14 months. Breast cancer. Stage 4 when they found it. His voice was steady, practiced, like he'd said those words to doctors and lawyers and well-meaning relatives too many times to count. We had 6 months from diagnosis to, I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back or help me figure out how to braid Marin's hair or know whether she's acting out because she's 6 or because she's grieving. Autumn watched his profile, noting the way his jaw worked as he fought to keep his composure. You know what Marin told me about this place? Elijah looked at her, waiting. She said her mother told her every girl needs a place to think her biggest thoughts. And her biggest thought today was wondering if it's okay to be happy when someone you love is gone. His breath caught. She's not trying to forget her mother by being happy, Elijah. She's trying to honor her by still finding joy. But she needs to know that's okay with you. When he looked at her this time, his honey-colored eyes were bright with unshed tears. I used to think I knew everything about being strong, he said softly. But losing Caroline, it broke something in me that I don't know how to fix. Maybe it's not about fixing it. Maybe it's about learning to live with it differently. A comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the sound of wind through the vineyard, and Marin's voice drifting from the house as she talked to Shakespeare. She really said she thinks you're beautiful? Elijah asked suddenly. Autumn felt heat creep up her neck. She's very observant. She is. He paused. Oh, she's also usually right about people. When their eyes met this time, the air between them shifted into something Autumn didn't recognize but couldn't ignore. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone see you clearly. The rest of the afternoon unfolded with a careful tenderness neither of them had expected. Elijah didn't return to the vineyard. Instead, he stayed for lunch. Grilled cheese sandwiches cut into star shapes because Marin insisted they tasted better that way. Autumn watched him listen to his daughter's chatter about fairy houses and photography. Really listen. And something warm unfurled in her chest. Autumn, will you help me build a fort after lunch? Marin asked, swinging her legs from her chair at the kitchen table. If your dad doesn't mind me moving furniture around. Elijah's eyes met hers across the table. I think we can handle a little chaos. The fort took over the entire living room. Couch cushions became walls. Blankets draped from chair backs created a ceiling, and every pillow in the house found its way into their architectural masterpiece. Autumn found herself crawling through tunnels alongside Marin, both of them giggling like conspirators. You have to make the secret knock, Marin explained from inside their blanket palace. 3 knocks, then two, then one really quiet one. From the kitchen doorway, Elijah watched them with an expression Autumn couldn't quite read when she caught his eye. There was something raw there, something that looked almost like longing. "Daddy, come see," Maren called. "It's our castle. I don't think I'll fit in there, sweetheart." "Sure you will." "Autumn, tell him he'll fit." Autumn looked at Elijah's 6'2" frame, then at the blanket fort that barely accommodated her and a 6-year-old. "We might need to make some architectural adjustments." What followed was 15 minutes of the three of them rebuilding the forty. Elijah's engineering background evident in the way he reinforced their blanket ceiling and created better support structures. His shoulder brushed against Autumn's as they worked, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with vineyard earth and something uniquely him. "There," he said finally, testing the stability of a pillow wall. "Now it should hold." "Test it," Maren demanded. Elijah looked skeptical, but he crawled into the fort anyway, his large frame folding awkwardly into the small space. Maren immediately settled against his side, and after a moment's hesitation, Autumn found herself sitting cross-legged across from them in the cozy cocoon they'd created. "It's like a real castle," Maren whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. "Better than a castle," Autumn said softly. "Castles are cold and empty. This is warm. And it has the best people in it," Maren added, looking between her father and Autumn with satisfaction. The afternoon light filtering through the blankets cast everything in a golden glow. In that moment, surrounded by pillows and the sound of Maren's contented breathing, Autumn felt something she'd almost forgotten existed: belonging. "I should start dinner," Elijah said eventually, but he made no move to leave the fort. "Can we eat in here?" Maren asked hopefully. "That depends. What does our royal chef think about serving dinner in a blanket castle?" It took Autumn a moment to realize he was asking her. The casual way he'd included her in the decision, like she belonged in their family dynamics, made her heart skip. "I think," she said carefully, "that some of the best meals happen in unexpected places." They had spaghetti and meatballs on paper plates. Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, Maren insisted on proper etiquette for castle dining, which apparently involved pinky fingers extended and lots of giggling when someone inevitably dropped a meatball. "Tell me about New York," Elijah said when Maren got distracted by trying to feed Shakespeare a strand of spaghetti. "What do you want to know?" "What you love about it. What makes you stay?" Autumn twirled pasta around her fork, considering. "The energy, I guess. The way anything can happen at any moment. You can turn a corner and discover something amazing, or meet someone who changes your perspective completely. Sounds lonely. It can be. Ironically, you can be surrounded by 8 million people and still feel completely alone. Is that why you do freelance work? The independence? Partly. But mostly because I haven't found anyone who believes in my vision enough to hire me permanently." The admission slipped out before she could stop it, more honest than she'd intended. "What's your vision?" The question was simple, but something in his tone suggested he genuinely wanted to know. Autumn looked at him across their makeshift dining room, really looked at him. The way the golden light softened his features, the careful attention he gave to her words, the unconscious way he kept checking on Maren even while focused on their conversation. "I want to capture real moments. Not posed perfection, but the spaces between words where people are most themselves, the way someone's face changes when they think no one's watching, the beauty in ordinary things." "Like what?" "Like this." She gestured around them. A father learning to laugh again. A little girl who builds castles out of blankets and serves spaghetti like it's a royal feast. People choosing to be present with each other instead of hiding behind their fears. Elijah was quiet for so long that Autumn wondered if she'd said too much. Then Maren yawned dramatically and announced she was too tired to keep her eyes open. "Bedtime for princesses," Elijah said, scooping her up from the floor. "Will Autumn tuck me in too?" Autumn's chest tightened at the casual way Maren included her, like she was already part of their nighttime routine. "If she wants to," Elijah said, his eyes finding Autumn's. Maren's bedtime ritual was elaborate and sweet. They read 2 stories, sang a lullaby that Caroline had apparently made up about brave little girls who weren't afraid of the dark, and discussed tomorrow's plans for fairy house construction. "Autumn?" Maren's voice was sleepy but determined. "Yeah, sweetheart? I'm glad you came here. Daddy smiles different when you're around." Autumn's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Like he remembers how, when they finally turned off Maren's bedroom light and stepped into the hallway, the house felt different, quieter, but not empty, expectant. Coffee? Elijah asked softly. I should probably clean up the living room first. Leave it. Marin will want to play in her castle again tomorrow. They stood in the hallway, suddenly aware that they were alone together for the first time all day. The easy familiarity they'd built around Marin felt more complicated now, charged with possibilities neither of them had planned for. Elijah, Autumn started, not sure what she wanted to say. I know, he said quietly. This wasn't supposed to happen, but neither of them moved away. The heart recognizes home before the mind catches up. They sat on the front porch steps with steaming coffee mugs, the vineyard stretching out before them in the moonlight. The night air carried the scent of late summer, ripe grapes, honeysuckle, and something indefinably peaceful that made Autumn understand why people chose quiet over chaos. How do you do it? She asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Do what? Run all of this alone. The vineyard, raising Marin, maintaining a house that looks like it belongs in a magazine. She gestured around them. I can barely keep my studio apartment from looking like a tornado hit it. Elijah's laugh was soft and self-deprecating. You should see my office. I have 3 months of paperwork I keep meaning to organize. And half the time Marin's dinner is whatever I can microwave while she's distracted by cartoons. But you make it look effortless. Caroline was the one who made everything look effortless. She could cook a 5-course meal while helping Marin with art projects and somehow still have energy to listen to me complain about irrigation problems. His voice caught slightly. I am just trying not to mess up what she built too badly. Autumn studied his profile in the porch light. You're not messing up anything. Marin is happy, healthy, and clearly adored. That's what matters. Is she, though? Happy? He turned to look at her. Because sometimes I watch her playing alone in her room, talking to her stuffed animals like they're real people, and I wonder if I'm failing her, if she needs more than I know how to give. She needs you. The way you listen when she talks about fairy houses, the way you reinforce blanket forts even though you could barely fit inside, the way you let her eat spaghetti with her fingers because it makes her laugh. Autumn set down her coffee mug. You're not failing her, Elijah. You're loving her. Some days it doesn't feel like enough, because you're comparing yourself to someone who was perfect in your memory. But Marin isn't comparing. She just knows her daddy shows up for her every day, even when it's hard. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken things settling between them like fog. What about you? Elijah asked finally. What made you choose photography? My mother died when I was 12. Car accident. The words came easier than they usually did. Afterward, everyone kept saying things like, remember the good times and focus on happy memories. But I realized I was already forgetting little things. The way she hummed while folding laundry, how she always left lipstick marks on coffee cups, the exact sound of her laugh. Elijah's hand moved closer to hers on the step, not quite touching but close enough that she could feel its warmth. I started carrying a disposable camera everywhere, taking pictures of moments that seemed too small to matter. My sister making faces in the bathroom mirror, my grandmother's hands while she cooked, the way afternoon light looked coming through our kitchen window. Autumn's voice grew softer. I guess I learned that the ordinary moments are the ones we miss most. Is that why you took pictures of Marin today? To capture ordinary moments. I took pictures of Marin because she was beautiful in that space, because she belonged there in a way that made the whole place more alive. Autumn turned to face him fully, the same way you belong in those moments with her, even when you don't feel like you do. Elijah was quiet for so long that Autumn wondered if she'd overstepped again. Then he said, Caroline used to take pictures like that. Not posed family portraits, but random moments. Marin finger painting, me reading bedtime stories, Sunday mornings when we were all too lazy to get dressed. Do you still have them? Boxes of them. I haven't been able to look through them since. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. It's easier to avoid them than to remember how good things used to be. Maybe avoiding them isn't protecting you. Maybe it's protecting you from healing. The words hung between them, gentle but challenging. Autumn held her breath, wondering if she'd pushed too far. You're very wise for someone who lives on instant ramen and has bills scattered on her floor, Elijah said finally, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Hey, that ramen has gotten me through some tough times, and the bills on the floor are strategically placed to remind me of my priorities, which are survival first, dreams second, actual adult organization, a distant third. This time his laugh was fuller, more genuine. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in months. I try to specialize in uncomfortable honesty. It's a niche market, but I'm very good at it. I've noticed. His voice went softer. It's been a long time since someone talked to me like I was a person instead of a tragedy to be handled carefully. People don't know what to do with grief. It makes them uncomfortable, so they either avoid it completely or treat you like you're made of glass. Which one were you? The avoider. After my mom died, I perfected the art of changing the subject whenever anyone mentioned her. It took me years to realize I was cheating myself out of getting to talk about someone I loved. And now I think the people we lose deserve better than our silence. They deserve to be remembered out loud. Elijah turned to look at her, then really look at her, and Autumn felt something shift in the air between them. His honey-colored eyes searched her face like he was memorizing it. Autumn, he said quietly. Yeah, thank you. For today, for seeing Maren, really seeing her, for not being afraid of our grief. Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with your daughter's sacred spaces. The distance between them on the steps seemed to shrink without either of them moving. Autumn could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, could count the lines at their corners that spoke of squinting into vineyard sunlight. This is complicated, he said softly. Very complicated. You're leaving in 4 days. 3 days now. I don't do complicated very well anymore. Neither do I. But neither of them moved away. Instead, they sat in the growing tension of something that felt both inevitable and impossible, watching the moon rise over the vineyard and pretending they couldn't feel their hearts beating in sync. We should probably go inside, Elijah said eventually. Probably. They stood up at the same time, their shoulders brushing as they reached for their empty coffee mugs. The brief contact sent electricity through Autumn's entire body. Good night, Autumn. Good night, Elijah. But as she lay in the guest room bed an hour later, staring at the ceiling and listening to the old house settle around her, Autumn knew that everything had changed between them, and she had no idea what she was going to do about it. Some mornings arrive with the weight of everything that's about to change. Autumn woke to the sound of giggling and the smell of pancakes. For a moment, lying in the unfamiliar bed with sunlight streaming through windows that faced rolling hills instead of brick walls, she forgot where she was. Then Maren's voice drifted up from the kitchen, animated and happy, and reality settled around her like a warm blanket. She'd been here 3 days. 3 days, and somehow this house felt more like home than her studio apartment ever had. Autumn, Maren's voice called from downstairs. Daddy's making Mickey Mouse pancakes, but they look more like blobs. I heard that. Elijah's voice carried mock indignation, and Autumn found herself smiling before she was fully awake. She pulled on jeans and the vintage cardigan she'd brought, running her fingers through her black hair and catching her reflection in the antique mirror above the dresser. Her green pearl eyes looked different somehow, brighter, less guarded, like she'd been sleeping better than she had in months. Downstairs, she found Elijah at the stove, hair still messed from sleep, wearing a t-shirt that clung to his shoulders in ways that made her forget to breathe for a moment. Maren sat at the kitchen table, still in princess pajamas, directing the pancake operation with serious authority. The ears need to be bigger, Daddy. Mickey has really big ears. I'm an engineer, not an artist, Elijah said, flipping what was definitely more blob than mouse. Maybe our photographer friend has better spatial reasoning. Are you asking for professional help with breakfast? Autumn asked, accepting the coffee mug he handed her. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and she felt that same electric current from the night before. I'm asking for a miracle, or at least something that resembles a cartoon character. Autumn moved to stand beside him at the stove, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. Here, let me show you. You need to pour the head first, let it set for a minute, then add the ears while the batter's still wet enough to stick together. She guided his hand holding the ladle, her fingers covering his as they poured the batter. See, patience is the key. Patience, he repeated, but his voice was rougher than it should have been for a conversation about pancakes. When she looked up, his honey-colored eyes were focused on her face instead of the griddle. Perfect, Maren announced when they finally produced a recognizable Mickey Mouse. Autumn, you're magic. Just practice, Autumn said, stepping back from Elijah's warmth before she did something she might regret. They ate breakfast at the kitchen table, Maren chattering about her plans to show Autumn the secret swimming hole later, and Elijah making notes about vineyard work on a napkin. It felt domestic in a way that made Autumn's chest tight with longing. I need to run into town for supplies this morning, Elijah said, finishing his coffee. There's a hardware store run and I should stop by the post office. You two want to come along? Yes. Marin bounced in her chair. Can we get ice cream after? And show Autumn the bookstore with the cat? We'll see, Elijah said, but his smile suggested the answer was yes. The drive into Millbrook took them through countryside that looked like a postcard. Stone walls, covered bridges, farms with red barns that actually housed animals instead of serving as decoration. Autumn found herself taking mental photographs of everything, storing images of a life she'd never imagined wanting. This is where I grew up, Elijah said as they passed a white colonial house with black shutters. My parents still live there. They're in Florida for the month, visiting my aunt. Do they help with Marin? They try, but it's hard for them too. She reminds them of Caroline, and sometimes that's more than they can handle. Autumn understood. Grief wasn't just about missing someone. It was about all the ways their absence rippled out to affect everyone who loved them. The town center was exactly what Autumn had expected from a Connecticut village. A white church with a tall steeple, shops with hand-painted signs, and the kind of main street where people still knew each other's names. It felt like stepping into a movie about simpler times. Elijah, a woman with silver hair and a genuine smile, waved from the sidewalk. How are you, honey? And this must be little Marin. Mrs. Patterson, Elijah said warmly. Marin, you remember Mrs. Patterson from the library? Hi. Marin waved enthusiastically. This is Autumn. She's taking care of me, and she's really good at pancakes. Mrs. Patterson's eyes moved to Autumn with undisguised curiosity. How lovely to meet you, dear. Are you visiting from the city? Just temporarily, Autumn said, suddenly aware of how she must look, young, urban, completely out of place in this small-town scene. Well, isn't that nice? Elijah. She's beautiful. Caroline would have liked her. The casual mention of his wife hit like a physical blow. Autumn saw Elijah's shoulders tense, saw the careful mask slide over his features. We should get going, he said quietly. The hardware store closes early on Saturdays. As they walked away, Autumn caught the way Mrs. Patterson watched them, speculation clear in her expression. Small towns, she realized, were incubators for gossip. The hardware store was a maze of aisles filled with everything from garden tools to plumbing supplies. While Elijah gathered irrigation parts, Marin dragged Autumn to the paint sample display, insisting they needed to find the perfect color for fairy house doors. This one, Marin held up a sample called Enchanted Forest Green. It's magic color. It's perfect, Autumn agreed, taking a photo of Marin holding the paint chip up to the light. She was so focused on the shot that she didn't notice the other customer until Marin spoke up. Daddy, who's that man taking pictures of us? Autumn spun around to see a middle-aged man with a professional camera, definitely not the type of equipment someone used for vacation snapshots. When he saw her looking, he lowered the camera quickly, but not before she caught the telephoto lens. Excuse me, Autumn called out, but the man was already walking quickly toward the exit. Elijah appeared at her side, having heard Marin's question. What man? Someone was taking pictures of us. He left when I noticed. Elijah's expression darkened. What did he look like? Mid-40s, baseball cap, expensive camera equipment. Autumn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the store's air conditioning. Do you think? Daddy, I'm scared, Marin whispered, pressing closer to Elijah's leg. It's okay, sweetheart. We're leaving now. Elijah scooped Marin up, his eyes scanning the store. Autumn, we need to go. They made it to the parking lot without seeing the photographer again, but Autumn could feel eyes on them. As they loaded into Elijah's truck, she noticed a sedan with tinted windows parked across the street. Elijah, what's going on? Who would want to take pictures of you? He was quiet until they were out of town, Marin distracted by the radio and the promise of ice cream on the way home. The vineyard's been in my family for 4 generations, he said finally. When Caroline died, there was some media attention because of the inheritance, the land value. Most of it died down, but sometimes what? Sometimes people remember that I'm worth more than I look like I am. The words hit Autumn like cold water, worth more than he looked. She thought about the modest clothes, the casual way he lived, the normalcy she'd been drawn to. She'd never once considered that Elijah might be wealthy, really wealthy. How much more? She asked quietly. Does it matter? The question hung between them as they drove home, Marin singing along to the radio, oblivious to the tension that had suddenly filled the truck. But Autumn was already calculating. If someone was taking pictures, if there was media interest, if she was photographed with him. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Call me ASAP. There's something you need to know about your vineyard guy. The truth has a way of arriving at exactly the wrong moment." Autumn waited until Maren was napping and Elijah was back in the vineyard before calling her sister. She sat in the guest room with the door closed, her heart hammering as she dialed. "Finally," Chloe answered on the first ring. "I've been going crazy waiting for you to call. What did you find out?" "Autumn, honey, you need to sit down for this. Your vineyard guy, Elijah Crestwood, he's not just some local farmer. I kind of figured that out today. Someone was taking pictures of us in town." "Pictures? Oh God, this is worse than I thought." Chloe's voice went tight with worry. "Autumn, he's worth about $40 million. The vineyard is one of the most prestigious in New England. His family doesn't just make wine. They're basically American royalty in the wine world. 40 million. The number hit Autumn like a physical blow. "But that's not the worst part," Chloe continued. "I Googled him after you told me his name, and Autumn, his wife didn't just die of cancer. She was Caroline Ashworth Crestwood, as in the Ashworth Foundation. Her family owns half of Manhattan real estate. I don't understand. She was an heiress, and when she died, there was this huge scandal because people thought Elijah married her for the money. It was all over the society pages. They called him a gold digger who got lucky when she got sick." Autumn felt sick. "That's horrible. It gets worse. There are articles suggesting he's been looking for someone to help him raise his daughter, someone he can control, someone who needs the money enough to be grateful." Chloe's voice was gentle but firm. "Autumn, I know you like him, but you need to think about this. A billionaire widower doesn't hire random babysitters. He has nannies, housekeepers, staff. Why would he need you specifically?" The question hung in the air like poison. Autumn thought about how quickly Elijah had agreed to hire her sight unseen, how he'd paid cash up front, how he'd been so understanding about her financial situation. "Maybe because I'm safe," she whispered. "Temporary. Someone who won't expect anything permanent, or someone who's desperate enough to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention he gives you." Autumn closed her eyes, remembering the way he'd looked at her on the porch last night. Had it been genuine or calculated? Had she misread everything? "There's more," Chloe said softly. "I found social media posts from today. Someone posted a photo of him with a mystery woman at a hardware store. The comments are, not kind. What do they say? People calling you a gold digger, saying you're obviously after his money. Some woman claiming she knows you're probably already pregnant, trying to trap him." Chloe paused. "Autumn, it's going viral. Mystery Nanny is trending." Autumn felt the world tilt sideways. "How is that possible? I don't even have social media accounts under my real name. Someone identified you. They found your photography website, your freelance listings. They're saying you specifically targeted him." The phone felt heavy in her hands. "Chloe, none of that is true. I didn't even know who he was until an hour ago." "I know that, but the internet doesn't care about truth. They care about drama. And a poor photographer allegedly seducing a rich widower. That's pure catnip." Autumn thought about Mrs. Patterson's knowing look, about the photographer in the store, about the way Elijah had gone quiet when she'd asked about his wealth. "There's something else," Chloe said quietly. "I found an article from 6 months ago. Elijah gave an interview where he said he'd never remarry, that his focus was entirely on preserving his wife's memory and raising their daughter. He specifically said he had no interest in romantic relationships." The words hit like a slap. Every moment from the past 3 days replayed in her mind. The lingering looks, the careful conversations, the electricity when they touched. Had she imagined it all? Had she been so starved for connection that she'd misread basic kindness for something more? "Autumn, are you still there?" "I'm here." Her voice sounded hollow to her own ears. "Come home. Today, before this gets any worse. I can't just leave. There's still 2 days left, and Maren has a father worth $40 million. She'll be fine. You're the one I'm worried about." After Autumn hung up, she sat in the quiet guest room for a long time, staring at her hands. Everything felt different now. The antique furniture, the views of the vineyard, even the way the afternoon light fell across the hardwood floors. What had felt like a sanctuary an hour ago now felt like a museum. Beautiful, but untouchable. A soft knock on the door made her look up. "Autumn!" Marin's sleepy voice came through the wood. Can you help me with something? Of course, sweetheart. Autumn forced her voice to sound normal. As she opened the door, Marin stood in the hallway in her socks, hair mussed from her nap, holding her tablet with a confused expression. Someone put pictures of us on the computer, she said. But they're saying mean things about you. I don't understand why. Autumn's blood went cold. What kind of pictures? Marin held up the tablet, and Autumn saw her own face staring back from what looked like a gossip website. The headline read, Mystery Woman Spotted with Reclusive Wine Air, Gold Digger or True Love. Below it was a photo of her and Elijah at the hardware store, their heads bent together as they looked at paint samples with Marin. Someone had circled her face in red and added arrows pointing to her designer cardigan and expensive camera equipment. They say you're trying to marry Daddy for money, Marin said, her 6-year-old voice matter-of-fact but confused. But that's silly. You like Daddy because he's nice, not because he has money. Autumn felt tears prick her eyes. Marin, where did you see this? It popped up when I was trying to play games. There's lots of pictures. Look. Marin swiped to show more photos. Autumn arriving at the house 3 days ago, her and Marin in the garden, even one of her sitting on the porch steps with Elijah the night before. Someone had been watching them, documenting them, turning their private moments into public entertainment. Marin, you shouldn't look at these anymore, okay? People on the internet sometimes say things that aren't true. But why would they say mean things about you? You're the nicest person ever. Because Autumn struggled to find words a 6-year-old could understand. Because sometimes people make up stories about things they don't understand. Daddy, Marin called suddenly, apparently hearing the front door. Autumn's sad because people are being mean to her on the computer. Heavy footsteps on the stairs, and then Elijah appeared in the hallway, still in his work clothes, dirt on his hands and concern in his honey-colored eyes. What's wrong? He asked, looking between them. Marin held up the tablet. People put pictures of us online and they're saying Autumn wants to marry you for money. But that's stupid because you don't act like you have money. Elijah's face went carefully blank as he took the tablet. Autumn watched him scroll through the photos, the articles, the comments. His jaw tightened with each swipe. How long has this been online? His voice was controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath. I don't know. My sister called and told me about it an hour ago. Your sister knew about this before we did. Something in his tone made Autumn look at him more closely. She was worried about me. She looked you up after I told her your name, so she knew who I was. Not until today. None of us knew until today. But even as she said it, Autumn could see the doubt creeping into his expression, the careful distance he'd learned to maintain reasserting itself. Daddy, you look angry, Marin said softly. Elijah crouched down to her level, his voice gentle when he spoke to his daughter. I'm not angry at you, sweetheart, but I need to talk to Autumn about grown-up things. Can you go play in your room for a little while? Are you going to fight? We're going to have a conversation. Marin looked between them with the wisdom of a child who'd learned to read adult emotions too well. Don't be mad at Autumn. She didn't do anything wrong. If only it were that simple, Autumn thought as she watched the little girl who'd become so important to her walk reluctantly down the hall. When they were alone, Elijah straightened to his full height, and suddenly the hallway felt much smaller. We need to talk. When trust breaks, it doesn't shatter cleanly. It splinters into 1,000 pieces that cut everyone nearby. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table like strangers negotiating a business deal. The warmth that had filled this space during breakfast felt like a memory from another lifetime. How long have you known? Elijah's voice was carefully controlled, but Autumn could see the hurt behind his honey-colored eyes. Known what? Who I am. What I'm worth. What happened with Caroline? The question hit her like ice water. I told you. I found out today. My sister looked you up after I mentioned your name. Right, your sister. His tone suggested he didn't believe her. The same sister who conveniently canceled at the last minute, giving you this opportunity. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Did you know who I was when you took this job? Autumn felt anger flare in her chest. You think I orchestrated this? That I somehow manipulated my pregnant sister into canceling so I could, what? Seduce you for your money? It wouldn't be the first time. The words were quiet, but they landed like a slap. Autumn stared at him, seeing not the man who'd built blanket forts and shared quiet conversations on the porch, but someone harder, someone who'd been hurt enough times to expect the worst. You really believe that? She said softly. You actually think I'm here for your money. I think you're a freelance photographer who lives paycheck to paycheck, and I think you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity when you see one. An opportunity. Autumn's voice was flat. Is that what you think the last 3 days have been? Me working an angle? Haven't they? The question hung between them like a challenge. Autumn thought about all the moments that had felt real. The conversation in Marin's secret place, the late-night talk on the porch, the way he'd looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. What about you? She asked finally. Was any of it real for you? Or was I just convenient? The temporary help who wouldn't expect anything permanent. Something flickered in his expression, but his voice remained steady. I hired you to watch my daughter. Anything else was a mistake. The word mistake hit her harder than she'd expected. A mistake. Right. Autumn. No, I get it. You're protecting yourself. And Marin. I understand that. She stood up from the table, her movements careful and controlled. But I need you to understand something too. I didn't know who you were, I didn't plan this, and I sure as hell didn't spend 3 days falling for you because of your bank account. Falling for me? His voice cracked slightly on the words. Yeah, stupid, right? I fell for the guy who made Mickey Mouse pancakes and listened to his daughter talk about fairy houses, like they were the most important thing in the world. I fell for the man who wasn't afraid to grieve and still found ways to laugh. But that guy apparently doesn't exist. He exists, Elijah said quietly. But he's been burned before, badly, and now you're burning me to protect yourself from getting burned again. Autumn shook her head. That's not protection, Elijah. That's just fear wearing a different mask. They stared at each other across the kitchen that had become a battleground. In the silence, Autumn could hear Marin's voice drifting from upstairs, talking to her stuffed animals about princess adventures. I'll pack my things, Autumn said finally. I'll be gone within the hour. You don't have to leave tonight. The job was for 5 days. I can't stay here pretending everything's normal while you look at me like I'm a threat to your family. Her voice cracked slightly. And I can't watch Marin get attached to someone you've already decided is temporary. Autumn, please. Please what? Please continue this charade while you wait for me to prove I'm exactly what you expect me to be. Please stick around so you can feel justified in your suspicions. She wiped away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I deserve better than that. And so does Marin. She started toward the stairs, then stopped without turning around. For what it's worth, your daughter is amazing. She's brave and kind and sees beauty in everything, even when the adults around her are too scared to take chances. Don't let your fear stop her from believing in people. Where will you go? His voice was barely above a whisper. Back to my real life, the one where I eat ramen and worry about bills and don't pretend I belong in places like this. Autumn made it to the guest room before the tears really started. She threw her clothes into her duffel bag with shaking hands, trying not to think about how this morning she'd been planning fairy house construction and afternoon photography sessions. A soft knock on the door made her freeze. Autumn. Marin's voice was small and confused. Why are you putting your clothes in your bag? Autumn wiped her eyes before opening the door. Marin stood in the hallway holding Shakespeare, her honey-colored eyes wide with concern. I have to go back to New York earlier than planned, sweetheart. But why? Did I do something wrong? Was it because I showed you the computer pictures? Oh, honey, no. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups just have to make hard choices. Is it because people were mean about you on the internet? Autumn crouched down to Marin's level, her heart breaking at the worry in those young eyes. People say things sometimes when they don't understand a situation, but that's not why I'm leaving. Then why? How do you explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes love isn't enough? That sometimes the people we care about are too afraid to trust what they feel? Because your daddy and I realized that I don't really belong here. This was always supposed to be temporary, but I don't want it to be temporary. Marin's lip trembled. I like having you here. It feels like we're a family. The words shattered what was left of Autumn's composure. She pulled Marin into a hug, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. You are a family, sweetheart. You and your daddy, and he loves you more than anything in the world. Will you come visit me? Autumn couldn't lie to her, but she couldn't bear to tell the truth either. I'll always remember our time together. The fairy houses and the secret place and the way you make everything more beautiful just by being yourself. That's not the same as visiting. No, Autumn admitted. It's not. Footsteps on the stairs announced Elijah's approach. He appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. Marin, why don't you go wash your hands for dinner? I don't want dinner. I want Autumn to stay. Maren, it's not fair. The words exploded out of her with 6-year-old fury. First Mommy goes away forever, and now Autumn has to go away too. I hate it when people leave. She ran down the hallway to her room, and the sound of her door slamming echoed through the house like a gunshot. Elijah stood in the doorway, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. I should go talk to her. Yeah, you should. But first, answer me this. Was any of it real? The conversations, the way you looked at me, the moment on the porch when you said this wasn't supposed to happen? Autumn's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Because if it was all just loneliness and convenience, I can live with that. But if it was real and you're throwing it away because you're scared, that's going to haunt both of us. Elijah was quiet for so long that Autumn thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. It was real, all of it. Then you're an even bigger fool than I thought. She shouldered her duffel bag and walked past him toward the stairs, leaving behind the scent of her perfume and the echo of what might have been. At the front door, she turned back one last time. Through the kitchen window, she could see the vineyard stretching toward the horizon, golden in the late afternoon light. For 3 days, it had felt like home. The taxi she'd called was already waiting in the driveway, engine running like an escape route back to reality. As they pulled away, Autumn caught a glimpse of Elijah standing at Maren's bedroom window, both of them watching her leave. She didn't look back again, but she could feel their eyes on her until the house disappeared behind the hills. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Coming home? On my way, she typed back. You were right. It was too good to be true. But as the Connecticut countryside gave way to highway, Autumn couldn't shake the feeling that she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Some truths refuse to stay buried, no matter how deep we dig the grave. 3 days later, Autumn sat in her studio apartment staring at a job offer that should have made her ecstatic. Senior photographer position at Morrison Creative, one of Manhattan's most prestigious studios. Good salary, benefits, the kind of career stability she'd been chasing for years. She should have been celebrating. Instead, she felt hollow. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop since she'd returned from Connecticut. Interview requests, social media notifications, even a few legitimate job offers sparked by the media attention. Her mysterious nanny status had somehow translated into professional opportunities. None of it felt real. The knock on her door came at sunset, soft but insistent. Autumn expected her sister, maybe a neighbor, certainly not the deep voice that called through the wood. Autumn, it's Elijah. Please, I need to talk to you. Her heart stopped, then started beating so fast she thought it might explode. She opened the door to find him standing in her cramped hallway, looking completely out of place in his linen shirt and dark jeans. His honey-colored eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, his usually perfect hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. How did you find me? Your sister's address was on the original paperwork. She told me which apartment was yours. He paused, uncertainty flickering across his features. Can I come in? Please. Autumn stepped aside, acutely aware of how small her space looked with him in it. The Murphy bed, the coffee-stained portfolio, the bills she still hadn't organized, all evidence of the life she'd tried to escape for 5 days. Maren, she asked, with my parents? They drove up from Florida when I called them crying at 2 a.m. He ran a hand through his hair. She won't eat, won't talk, just sits in her secret place asking when you're coming back. The words hit Autumn like physical blows. Elijah. I was wrong. The words came out in a rush. I was so fucking wrong about everything, and I've spent 3 days trying to figure out how to fix it. You can't fix it. You made your choice. I made my choice out of fear, not facts, and I need you to know the facts. He pulled out his phone, swiping to what looked like a news article. This came out yesterday. Someone traced the original photos. They were taken by a private investigator hired by Caroline's family. Autumn's blood went cold. What? Caroline's parents never accepted our marriage. They thought I was after her money, and when she died, his voice cracked. They've been having me followed for over a year, looking for evidence that I'm an unfit father, evidence they can use to try to get custody of Maren. Oh my God. The photos of us were supposed to prove I was being reckless with their granddaughter. Instead, they showed something else entirely. He held up the phone, and Autumn saw a headline that made her stomach drop. Private investigator admits to stalking grieving widower. Family drops custody battle after photos reveal loving father. What does this mean? It means the whole scandal was manufactured. It means Caroline's family saw the photos and realized they were wrong about me. And it means, he set the phone down and looked directly at her. It means I destroyed the best thing that's happened to me and Maren since Caroline died because I was too scared to believe it was real. Autumn sank onto her bed, trying to process everything. The media attention is dying down now that the truth is out. Most outlets are running apology pieces about privacy invasion. Elijah sat carefully on her desk chair, maintaining distance but close enough that she could see the raw honesty in his expression. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Because 3 nights ago I listened to my daughter cry herself to sleep, asking why everyone she loves goes away. Because I haven't slept since you left. Because I keep looking for you in doorways and turning toward sounds that remind me of your laugh. His voice grew softer. Because I realized that losing you felt exactly like losing Caroline, except this time it was my fault. Tears stung Autumn's eyes. Elijah, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you and broke Maren's heart and proved that I'm exactly the kind of man who destroys good things when he gets scared. He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. But I love you. I'm completely, terrifyingly, life-changingly in love with you. And if there's any part of you that felt the same way, I'm asking you to consider giving us another chance. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross. How do I know you won't get scared again? How do I know that the next time something threatens what we have, you won't assume the worst about me? Because I've learned what it costs to choose fear over love. Because I've seen what my cowardice does to the people I care about most. He stood up slowly, moving closer but still respecting her space. Because I'd rather risk everything on something real than spend the rest of my life safe and alone. And Maren? What if this doesn't work out? What if... Maren asked me to bring you this. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. She made me promise to give it to you even if you said no to everything else. Autumn unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It was a drawing in crayon. 3 stick figures standing in front of a house, surrounded by hearts and flowers. One figure had long black hair and green eyes. One was tall with brown hair, and one was small with yellow braids and a crown. At the bottom, in careful 6-year-old handwriting, our family. Love, Maren. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. She drew it the night you left. Elijah said softly. She told me that families aren't just people who live in the same house. They're people who choose to love each other even when it's hard. She's very wise. She gets that from her mother. And from you. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, his fingers touched hers gently. Autumn, I can't promise I'll never be scared again, but I can promise that next time I'll choose to be scared with you instead of scared of you. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. The careful mask was completely gone, leaving only raw hope and desperate love. I got a job offer, she said quietly. A good one, here in New York. Something flickered in his expression, but he didn't let go of her hand. Congratulations. You deserve it. I turned it down this morning. Why? Because every time I tried to imagine myself in that studio, taking safe commercial photos of products and models, all I could think about was how it felt to capture real moments. Maren building fairy houses, you smiling when you thought no one was looking, the way sunlight looked coming through the vineyard at golden hour. She took a shaky breath. Because I realized that my vision isn't about the city or the job. It's about finding beauty in authentic moments. And the most authentic moments of my life happened in your house. Autumn, I love you too, she whispered. I love your daughter and your ridiculous Mickey Mouse pancakes and the way you listen like everything I say matters. I love the man you are when you're not protecting yourself from the world. Come home, he said simply. Come home to us. What about the media? What about people who will always think? Let them think whatever they want. I don't care about people who don't know us. I care about you and Maren, and building a life together that's real enough to survive whatever anyone else thinks about it. Autumn looked around her tiny apartment one more time, at the bills, the cramped space, the life she'd built on survival instead of dreams. Then she looked at Elijah, at the love in his honey-colored eyes, at the future he was offering with open hands. Okay, she said, let's go home. The kiss that followed tasted like second chances and promises kept. When they finally broke apart, Elijah rested his forehead against hers. Marin's going to lose her mind when she sees you. Good thing I brought my camera. Someone needs to document the reunion. Our photographer, he said softly, like he was testing how the words felt. Your photographer, your partner, your family. She smiled through her tears. Whatever you need me to be. Just be yourself. That's all I've ever wanted. As they loaded her few belongings into his truck, Autumn's phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Please tell me you're making a good choice. She looked at Elijah securing her camera equipment in the back seat, then typed back, the best choice of my life. The drive back to Connecticut felt like coming back to life. They talked about everything, Marin's adjustment, the vineyard's harvest season, how they'd navigate building a relationship while raising a 6-year-old who'd already claimed Autumn as family. There's something else, Elijah said as they turned onto Vineyard Road. I want to show you Caroline's photography studio. It's been locked up since she died, but I think it's time to let someone else bring it back to life. Autumn's heart stopped. Elijah, I couldn't. You could. She would have wanted her space used by someone who sees the world the way she did. Someone who understands that the most important photographs are the ones that capture love. The house came into view, golden in the late afternoon light, and Autumn saw a small figure burst through the front door. Autumn! Marin's voice carried across the yard as she ran toward the truck in her princess dress and tiara. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. Welcome home, Elijah said softly, and Autumn knew that this time, she was here to stay. 1 year later, the morning light filtered through the windows of Caroline's old photography studio, now alive again with the sound of Autumn's camera clicking and Marin's delighted laughter. The space had been transformed, but respectfully, Caroline's equipment carefully preserved alongside Autumn's, 2 artists' visions coexisting in harmony. Hold still, princess, Autumn called softly, adjusting her camera angle as Marin posed in her flower crown, surrounded by the fairy houses they'd built throughout the seasons. You're glowing. It's because I'm happy, Marin announced matter-of-factly, her 8-year-old wisdom startling as always. Daddy says happy people glow from the inside. Through the studio window, Autumn could see Elijah in the vineyard, checking the morning's harvest with the workers. Even from a distance, she could see the change in him, the way his shoulders sat easier, the genuine smiles that came more frequently now. The careful guardedness had been replaced by something deeper, contentment. Autumn? Marin's voice pulled her back to the moment. Are you going to marry Daddy? The question hung in the air like morning mist. It wasn't the first time Marin had asked, but today something in her tone suggested she really needed to know. Would that make you happy? Autumn asked, lowering her camera. Very happy, because then you'd be my real mom, not just my heart mom. Heart mom. The phrase made Autumn's chest tight with love. In the year since she'd returned, Marin had never once made her feel like a replacement for Caroline. Instead, the little girl had simply expanded her definition of family to include both the mother she remembered and the one who was here now. You know what? Autumn said, setting down her camera and sitting cross-legged on the studio floor. I think being a heart mom is the most real kind there is. Marin climbed into her lap, careful not to disturb her flower crown. Will you stay forever this time? Forever and ever. Even when I'm a teenager and probably really annoying. Especially then. They sat together in the quiet studio, surrounded by photographs that told the story of their first year as a family. Marin's 9th birthday party. Elijah teaching Autumn about winemaking. Christmas morning in matching pajamas. Spring planting in the vegetable garden. Simple moments that had become the foundation of something beautiful. There are my favorite girls. Elijah's voice came from the doorway, warm with the kind of affection that still made Autumn's heart skip. Daddy! Marin jumped up. Autumn says she's staying forever, even when I'm annoying. Well, that's good, because I was hoping to ask her something important. He walked into the studio, and Autumn noticed he looked nervous in a way that was entirely different from his usual morning energy. What kind of something? Marin asked, bouncing slightly. Elijah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The kind of something that requires this. Autumn's breath caught. In all their conversations about the future, about building a life together, about the ways their love had grown stronger through honesty and trust. They'd never talked about marriage. Not directly. Elijah, she started, but he was already kneeling down in front of her. Autumn Rose Bellamy, he said, his honey-colored eyes bright with unshed tears. You came into our lives for 5 days and changed everything. You taught me that love isn't about protecting yourself from loss. It's about choosing to be brave enough to build something beautiful even when you know it's precious. Marin clasped her hands together, practically vibrating with excitement. You chose us when it was complicated, stayed when it was hard, and loved us through all the messy, beautiful, ordinary moments that make a real family. His voice cracked slightly. Will you marry me? Will you choose us forever? The ring was perfect, simple, elegant, with a stone that caught the light like her green pearl eyes. But what made Autumn's heart race wasn't the ring itself. It was the way Elijah was looking at her, like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. The kiss that followed was interrupted by Marin throwing herself into their arms, creating a tangle of family that felt exactly right. Can I be the flower girl? Marin asked breathlessly. You can be whatever you want to be, Autumn said, laughing through her tears. I want to be your daughter. The words hung in the air like a blessing. Elijah's eyes met Autumn's over Marin's head, and she saw her own overwhelming emotion reflected there. You already are, Autumn said softly. You have been since the day you showed me your secret place and taught me that families are built on choice, not just chance. Later that evening, after Marin had fallen asleep between them during movie night on the couch, they'd never bothered to move back to its original position. Autumn and Elijah sat on the front porch steps where they'd had their first real conversation. Any regrets? Elijah asked, playing with the ring on her finger. Only one, Autumn said, leaning against his shoulder. What's that? I wish I could go back and tell the scared girl who showed up here with a duffel bag and a bunch of unpaid bills that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as temporary jobs. Maybe that's what we'll tell our kids someday. Our kids? Well, Marin's been asking for a little brother or sister since approximately 5 minutes after you said yes. Autumn laughed, the sound carrying across the vineyard where their love story had begun. Here she works fast. She knows what she wants. She gets that from both her mothers. The phrase settled between them comfortably. Caroline would always be part of their family story, not as a shadow from the past, but as the foundation that had taught them all how to love deeply and well. Elijah, thank you for coming to find me, for choosing love over fear. Thank you for coming back, for choosing us over safety. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear over the vineyard, both of them thinking about how 5 days had turned into forever, how temporary help had become eternal family, how sometimes the best love stories begin with someone brave enough to knock on a stranger's door and say yes to whatever happens next. In the house behind them, Marin slept peacefully, dreaming of wedding dresses and flower crowns and the family she'd helped create simply by being brave enough to share her secret place with someone who needed to belong somewhere. And in the morning, there would be breakfast to make, photographs to take, vines to tend, and 1,000 ordinary moments that would weave themselves into the extraordinary tapestry of a life built on love, choice, and the courage to believe that sometimes the most beautiful destinations are the ones you never plan to reach. Final message to audience. What would you have done in Autumn's place? Would you have had the courage to love someone whose heart was still healing? Would you have taken the risk of building a family with someone who'd already lost so much? Sometimes the most important journeys begin with a single yes to something that scares us. Sometimes home isn't a place we're born into, but a choice we make to love and be loved in return. What did you learn from Autumn and Elijah's story? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Your participation in this channel is very important to us, so please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.